Wait, what? What do you mean you're watching this on your phone? You've been staring at this shit the whole time? Dude, fine. Jesus, man, I'll do it myself. Bunch of lazy asses. This is how we do it back in the old days. Yeah. There you go. Is this gag funny enough to be worth the trouble? Welcome back to the video, by the way. We left off on everyone agreeing with me that Delta is stupid and not at all worth the price, so now it's about time to actually move on and get to why Twin Snakes is a good remake and everyone still hating on it is just beating a dead horse. I've arranged my remaining talking points in what I think is the order of least to most controversial, naturally, so stay tuned to get angry at a dude's opinion on the internet. Or perhaps open your mind to a different way of seeing a game that has been denied its time in the sun by butthurt fans who refuse to see a game they love in any way besides the way it was originally shown to them. I've alluded to it before, but Twin Snakes aims to convey a markedly different tone and atmosphere compared to its forecomer. MGS1 focuses more on the isolated, frozen vibe of Shadow Moses. The entire base feels like a long-abandoned relic of the US military, brought back to life by the terrorist forces now present within it. Twin Snakes feels more sleek and modern, highlighting the metal exterior and top floors, but still keeping the rugged, outdated feel in the stone environments and in places like the commander's office. Between the two of them, I feel like the Twin Snakes version makes more sense in the lore, considering the base was never actually decommissioned to store nuclear warheads and was instead being maintained in order to house and build the Rex project. But that isn't really important to the grand scheme of things, and I don't even really care about the lore in this series, and it really comes down to personal preference which one you prefer, so it is a difference. But differences are good, that's why I'm making this video. That said, both games do a good job of using their soundtracks to enhance their respective atmospheres. The original has a much more ghostly vibe to its soundtrack, lots of echoey effects on the various instruments, and a focus on high-pitched violin plucks, not to mention a heaping helping of wailing vocals, going for a sort of Hitchcock thriller vibe if I had to put a name to it, which fits with the twist-filled narrative and the greater focus on mystery as compared to the later games. Twin Snakes, on the other hand, is going for a more contemporary spy thriller vibe. Less suffocating isolation, more constant tension from the threat of the enemy. Like I said earlier, Twin Snakes has the more perceptive and aggressive enemies from MGS2 in it, so this music having a more constant and consistent tension to it makes a lot of sense. You never really feel safe to absorb the vibes of Shadow Moses with this stuff playing. The mission is always at the forefront of your mind. And with all of that said, I'd better discuss the more major differences between the soundtracks, because this is one of the three main things people will use to say that Twin Snakes is worse than the original. It's too basic, too generic spy thriller, and doesn't fit the Metal Gear vibe. Not to mention it rarely actually remixes music from the original game. That I do think is a little unfortunate. I would have preferred more remixes, but the ones that are present are good, so I'm happy for that. The funny thing about both of these soundtracks is that they were composed without, as far as I can tell, any input from series vet Harry Gregson Williams. It's less obvious in the original, but you can definitely tell in Twin Snakes. This soundtrack sticks far closer to the electronic trip-hop style of music that was popular around the time this game came out. I mean, Chaos Theory was right around the corner by this point, and Konami's own Silent Hill 2 was just a couple years behind, if that gives any indication. If I had to guess, I would say a lot of the hate for this soundtrack comes from the same place as the hate for Sonic Frontiers' more electric soundtrack as compared to the previous games in the series. The genre difference is too sharp and sudden for most, and a lot of people just don't like wholly electronic music in general. I definitely used to be in that boat, but for the person I am now, I love both of these soundtracks for much the same reasons. They're just good-ass songs. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely a huge departure, and the Metal Gear series would never really revisit this type of music, but with hindsight, it makes the soundtrack feel really special. A sort of what-if scenario, if that makes sense. A lot of Twin Snakes has that kind of appeal. That's one of the main things people are willing to give the game. Plus, especially when compared to the original game, Twin Snakes has one extreme saving grace that gives it a lot of credit in my book: variety. I know, weird thing to praise for the game people say has a soundtrack that may as well be the same song copy and pasted a million times for how boring and generic it sounds, which, again, I get disliking the genre the OST sticks to, but that's just straight up not true. So, hey, remember however long ago when I said I'd put y'all on this soundtrack? Let's go ahead and make that happen. First off, Twin Snakes makes a big departure from the original by having unique themes for nearly every individual area in the game. So even if the songs do end up bleeding together for some, I would still call it a near objective improvement because it isn't literally the same intrusion theme or alert theme for the entire game. One I'd like to highlight is the Tank Hangar battle theme, both because you're not likely to hear it for very long in your playthrough of the game, and because it's a good example of a musical idea I rarely see implemented in game soundtracks. This song does not induce a sense of panic in the listener, rather it underscores the existing panic the game itself provides. Where a big part of MGS1's gameplay loop is in simply startling the listener with that alert theme, immediately inducing a sense of panic, Twin Snakes is much more confident in knowing the player will be panicked by default because they just got spotted in a stealth game. Thus, it prefers to score the moment like an actual movie would, keeping it in the background with a catchy, slick tune, not interrupting the action playing out on screen. I've mentioned before that I really don't like when background music in a game artificially dramatizes the events that are going on, and even in Twin Snakes' more maximalist moments, it never feels like the music is making up for a lack of tension or action in gameplay. Especially on higher difficulties, when I'm meant to feel like I'm in danger, I know goddamn well that I'm in danger. The music is just the cherry on top, the cool backing track to accompany my badassery. Of course, when it comes to music, there is one category of theme that I have yet to touch on. But in order to talk about those, I first need to talk about the remaining additions made to the gameplay, so how about we do that? There are a few more noteworthy changes Twin Snakes makes to the act of exploring Shadow Moses and finding Metal Gear, so I'll go over those real quick. Chief among them, and something basically directly ported from MGS2, is the M9 Tranquilizer pistol. Now you have a ranged, non-lethal option for any encounter, so long as you actually find the thing. For most, that will be in the first area of the game, in one of the new lockers to the left of the elevator. Like I said before, this can trivialize a lot of the stealth, but again, that's true of every one of this thing's appearances in the series. One extra caveat to Twin Snakes especially, unfortunately, is that the areas in this game are all very small, with very long sightlines, which means it's much less of an ask to try and headshot every enemy you can see, because you can see all of them basically all the time. In this regard specifically, the game is a bit compromised in its difficulty. I don't really have a counter for that. I don't even really mean to underscore it. It definitely makes the game kind of trivial if that's how you're playing it. It just kind of sucks that the way the game was made makes that an inevitability for most players. I hope that makes it a little more clear that the goal of these videos has never been to say that Twin Snakes is a better or even good game, necessarily, even though I would consider it one. I'm not trying to heap endless praise onto it that it doesn't deserve. Talking of, there's also the dog tags mechanic. By using the new hold up, you can steal an enemy's dog tags. There's a couple ways of telling whether they have any, but the easiest is with thermal vision. Several other characters also have dog tags on them, but please make sure you don't stand around getting footage of them or they might just disappear. In MGS2, these collectibles would get you a lot of neat unlocks, mainly stealth camo, but also a lot of cool wigs for Raiden that would give him things like infinite ammo or infinite hanging stamina, all sorts of cool stuff. Naturally, Twin Snakes retains the original method of unlocking stealth camo and infinite ammo, which is by getting either ending. So, in order to make the dog tags worth getting, they added absolutely nothing. Yeah, there's no reason to get the dog tags. They're just a holdover mechanic from MGS2 that encourages you to play the game. Not much of an incentive, considering they have no reward tied to them. And I do wish they could have come up with something to make these things matter. Infinite stamina or the other unlocks from 2, but maybe tied to the little novelty sunglasses you get on replays of that game. But, oh well, I guess. Something a little more tangible, as in it actually exists, is alterations to several room layouts and challenges over the course of the game. This is actually partly tied to the dog tags thing, because in some rooms, brand new enemies have been added. Chief among them are the snowfield where you fight the tank, and the final room before Rex's hangar. They don't seem like much, but just giving you a challenge beyond mines and cameras does a lot to change the feel of moving through these areas. You can't just absent-mindedly toss your chaff and be on your way. Now you have to actually try, for as little as it seems like that means. Literally any gameplay is better than tossing a chaff and holding forward. Other rooms like the first floor basement under the nuke building and the cavern before the heliport have also got little added hiding spots that you can shimmy into, plus the lockers I mentioned earlier. In fact, a lot of rooms in the game now have lockers added to them, namely the ones which had lockers in them in the first place, you just couldn't use them back in the first game. But now you can. And the places where they were added don't just feel like meaningless additions, they're in places where you'd actually want a quick hiding spot or a place to store a body, since those are now a factor. Like I said before, Twin Snakes does a lot to discourage mindless play using the new mechanics of MGS2, even if first-person aim does make it easier to just run and gun in the immediate moment. In fact, talking of mindless gameplay, I'm gonna go ahead and rip off a band-aid here that I think most MGS1 enjoyers have sort of forgotten exists. If you're of the mind that being able to shoot cameras out in Twin Snakes is a negative thing, I'm sorry, but you have a really warped idea of what the word fun means. Every time I go back to MGS1 to give it another fair shake, I get viscerally reminded every time that this game is full of toll booths. What do I mean by that? Consider the numerous areas in the game where the only semblance of a challenge is a gun camera placed in a hallway, or with such an absurdly wide field of view that it's basically impossible to get around it. How do you navigate this thoughtfully placed obstacle? Toss a chaff and walk forward. Perhaps you'll need to toss 2. Perhaps you'll need to toss 4. Perhaps you'll need to toss 1 without even knowing there's a camera there because the game decided to steal your situational awareness for the sole purpose of taking a sliver of your health in an unfair way. Regardless of the situation, the fact is, plain and simple, this is really bad game design. It isn't fun, it isn't challenging. All it's doing is making sure you have a coin to toss the ferryman for the privilege of walking down a hallway to the next place you need to go. The entire system of cameras and chaff could have been removed from the game and it would be better for it. Or, instead of that, we could make cameras a one-time obstacle. Make them bleed your other resources besides chaff, seeing as ammo is just as, if not more valuable in this game compared to the original. Give chaff more than one reason to exist by making enemy radios a system that exists. Change that one infuriating part before the tower climb to now make sense as to why tossing chaff doesn't prevent it from forcing an action set piece. Give the player options for how to approach a situation. Let them approach the situations however they want. If they want to eliminate the camera, good news! It didn't mean very much in the first place, and nothing was lost because the game's design has generally been changed to accommodate it. If they want to avoid the camera, then they still have a challenge to contend with, then it likely means that the camera is in a public or convenient enough spot that being a challenge to navigate is something that makes the game more fun, not more tedious. Being able to shoot out cameras is a win-win scenario for the player, and any chance to cut down on the tedium in MGS1 is a blessing. Talking of cutting down tedium, Twin Snakes is so good at rewarding curious players with ways to avoid some of the game's more infamous backtracks. The non-lethal sniper in the Nuke Building's level 1 basement is a great way to force the player to leave Meryl behind, but not require them to go back an entire building for an item they could just as easily grab after the torture sequence. It also keeps the pace of the sequence up by shortening the time in which the player could calm down from Meryl's shooting and grow numb to the idea that she's in any actual danger. The color-coded pipes in the Rex hangar are also a fantastic way of making sure the player doesn't have to go on a 30-minute excursion to insert the PAL keys and listen to mandatory codec dialogue. But the incentive to go back still exists, thanks to that level 7 door back in the snowfield. Not to mention the added soldiers in the ice room, which now carry those dog tags I mentioned before, and the fact that you need to take damage in order to use the shortcut. So a big boss run might necessitate the long way around if you want to be extra careful about avoiding that damage. If we're talking substance, though, what might be the game's most important changes, but also its most divisive ones, are in the boss fights. On the one hand, yes, several bosses are now made absurdly easy due to a lack of more considerate design in their arenas and behaviors. Ocelot will stand still while you slide hot lead into his well-greased chamber. Mantis no longer makes first person impossible to use in his fight due to needing it for aiming purposes. Sniper Wolf is now much less threatening with the better sniping controls. Vulcan Raven is a joke. Nearly every one of them lack a sufficient challenge if you know the cheese, and those strats are neither as complicated nor as stringent on your resources as, for example, the Fear in MGS3. None of what I'm about to say removes the fact that the boss fights in Twin Snakes are technical downgrades from the original game. That said, if you're willing to not use the cheese and actually want to engage with these bosses on the level the game wants you to, even here you'll find a slew of changes and alterations that makes them markedly different from the original game. Which is, once again, more than Delta aims for. You remember when this video was about that? Those fights all have one noteworthy change to them, and for the most part, that change is just forcing you to engage with the boss for longer. It doesn't change the way you actually fight them, except for Volgan, where it is admittedly really cool, and the boss, where it sucks. And that's referring to changing her stuff into a QTE, by the way, not the breaking your gun and tossing ammo around. That I do like, that's a fun gimmick. What of Twin Snakes? Well, let's go through them one at a time. And remember, I'm aware that these boss fights can be beaten in seconds. This is a look at how they attempted to update the encounters, not whether they actually succeeded at that. Just keep that in mind. Ocelot may have gotten the fewest changes to his fight, but even so, it serves as a testament to how Twin Snakes aims to use MGS2's new mechanics in fresh and engaging ways. Take, for example, the added pipes to the room's perimeter. They were probably there in the original as decoration, but now, shooting them will release steam. This mechanic went severely underused in MGS2, so it being here is good. It can be used to hurt and stun Ocelot even when you can't see him, which gives you time to prepare your next attack. First-person aim now also makes it possible to engage with him from across the room, which means you don't have to run around in circles like an asshole blind firing between lobbing stun grenades. The far more important addition to this fight, though, is his new theme. I told you I'd bring these up later. Spy vs. Gunslinger is a good show of what you can expect from the music in this game, more of that minimalist mood-setting stuff. Still, don't let it be said that this track doesn't sound good. It sells the tension of the tight space and the permanent obstacle in the middle of the room, and the pulsing electronic sounds underscore the bullets being fired at you. A solid song, if not a particularly exciting one. Hopefully we get an improvement up next. The M1 tank might have seen the most alterations to any boss fight in this game, if for no other reason than because you can now use more than one weapon to attack it. Thanks to first-person aim, you can now fire your weapons at the mounted gunner. Even so, these won't do as much damage as a well-timed grenade will, which means that the fight isn't just nullifying the intended means of beating it. Those are the main changes to the fight itself, but everything around the tank has also seen numerous alterations. For one, the camera angle when approaching now actually shows you what's ahead, so you can better gauge how to approach this behemoth. It also lets you see the new trench added to the arena, which gives you ammo restocks and a place to hide when the tank tries running you over. Speaking of, I think the tank's speed has actually been increased here, but that's mitigated by its new weakness, claymore mines. Now those things at the beginning of the arena aren't just a pointless obstacle, they have an immediate utility. Use them to slow down the tank, and then aiming your weapons and grenades becomes much easier. Plenty of good changes, right? Well, one new negative is that the longer this fight goes on for, the longer you'll have to listen to Man vs. Machine, the worst boss fight in the game. There's nothing quite as mind-numbing as listening to the same second of music repeated ad nauseum for what could be 5 minutes or more if you don't blaze through this encounter. I don't even want to speak about this for any longer than I have to. You've been listening to it this whole time. You're aware that it sucks. Thankfully, we've now arrived at a pretty good streak of boss fights and themes. It's mostly good news from here on out. Starting with Gray Fox, his fight greatly benefits from the expanded hand-to-hand combat mechanics of MGS2. That is to say, you can now roll into him and do some damage, not to mention it's essentially a dodge move that Snake didn't used to have before. Yes, he could still duck some hits, but not all of them, and that required much more execution than simply avoiding the strike altogether. Given the balance changes to chaff grenades in the main game, it's also more likely that you'll have more to spare in this fight than you would in the original, which opens more opportunities for experimentation. It's not a mechanical upgrade, but Gray Fox himself has also gotten some updates to his animations, and between these and the new roll, the fight feels a lot more frantic and kinetic. You'll be moving around the arena much more than the original, and the blurry afterframes added onto his movement still make him feel a lot more capable and maneuverable than Snake feels. Adding on to this spectacle is what might be the best boss theme in the game, Soldier vs. Ghost. Grown tired of the mostly background-oriented score you've been hearing up to now? Then you'll be happy to hear this is the first song in the game that feels like a more standard Metal Gear track. Last thing worth mentioning is that the final phase, if you want to call it that, is not present in Twin Snakes. If what I said earlier hasn't already made this clear, I don't consider losing a random fuck you death a major blow to Twin Snakes, and seeing that it leads into the preceding cutscene pretty smoothly, I think it's a worthwhile change. Or at least not a gross negative one. But the cutscene talk will come later. We've hit the standout boss for MGS1, Psycho Mantis. As a boss, he hasn't changed that much. First person will work as normal for a couple seconds so as to make aiming possible, like I said, but not for long enough to make it easy. The statues remain at each side of the room for the use they provide, and Mantis's moves haven't been greatly changed, or changed at all as far as I can tell. A force ball is still a force ball, furniture flying around the room still hurts you. The changes that matter here are mostly found in the presentation of the fight. And in this regard, Mantis's fight in Twin Snakes is one I would consider, personally, opinions, there are opinions in this video. Me personally, I would consider this a wholesale upgrade over the original version. For one, the build-up cutscenes are way more fun here. The game loses all semblance of self-seriousness, and it plays up the cheese factor by a lot. Snake nodding at the camera for you to put your controller on the ground, the laughing portraits of Kojima, Kitamura, and Dyack, even something as simple as Psycho Mantis hitting the fruitiest pose I've seen in recent memory, and that is definitely because I'm forgetting a fruitier one that Raiden probably did. The moment gets so much love here. The only real downside is that the flow of the cutscenes is negatively impacted by the need to separate them into some in-game sequences instead of making the entire thing one long, scripted in-game cutscene, if that makes sense. Even with that, though, we still get stuff like Mantis's power of illusion being shown off in a better way with the fire display and the tilted camera angle during the fight throwing you off. Even the GameCube itself is used in a cool way by utilizing more of the controller ports to evade Mantis's psychic control. But none of that is the best addition to the fight. You might have been wondering why Soldier vs. Ghost was only maybe the best boss theme in the game, and it's because it might actually be Infiltrator vs. Parasite. Blackout! Badass remix of the Mantis hymn caps off this fight in the best way possible, and with it added onto everything else, once again, I have no doubt saying that this boss fight is a net upgrade over the original. It's Psycho Mantis, but more. Not too long after this encounter is Sniper Wolf. No, wait, we're leaving actually. But not too long after that is Sniper Wolf, who gets some of the most covert upgrades to her fights, by which I mean that now sniping doesn't feel like complete garbage. You can equip the rifle while standing or crouching, aiming speed has been greatly increased, and the PSG-1 now carries so many bullets in its magazine that you'll rarely find yourself missing an opportunity to shoot because of a reload. That said, the PSG-1T does still have a 5-round limit, so going for non-lethal in her fights will still give you that kind of challenge if that's what you're looking for. All told, there was really nothing that needed to be done to improve her fights besides making the controls not feel like complete garbage, and I'm glad that besides the controls, they play out much the same as the original. You still get the option to use your missiles in the second one, but honestly, the sniping controls are so much better here that I don't feel as motivated to do that. It's here that I'd like to remind that the boss theme, the one boss theme in the original game, can get a little grating after hearing it so much. I know there's a whole gimmick of it getting more instruments over the course of the game, but that is nowhere near enough of a change, at least in my book, to justify it being one of the 2 boss themes in the whole experience. Especially with how little time there is between Mantis and Wolf, you're gonna be hearing this theme a lot from this point onward, and with not a lot of downtime in between. With that in mind, Assassin vs. Saladin is a very good spike in adrenaline for both of her fights. Getting this song right after Mantis's, when the very beginning of it is full of so much energy, it just lends a lot of power to that moment, and hearing it kick back in when you return to the underground passage with some heavier firepower is a fantastic kick to the seat of your pants. It gets you really pumped for the fight itself. Then you get it one last time in the snowfield, which complements the ambush perfectly. There's a tension to these fights that wasn't here before, and it helps keep the fight feeling like an actual sniper duel, even with the improved controls leveling the playing field. The Hind V is another boss that has changed more so in the way you fight it than in the fight itself. The Stinger missiles now have a more powerful passive lock-on than they did before, since they needed to get a Harrier in MGS2, and you can direct them after launch in order to get around some corners. But that doesn't suddenly destroy the difficulty when the helicopter has been sped up both in its literal movement and how quickly it'll move through phases of hiding and striking. The darker sky also makes visibility more of a challenge, which I'm personally fine with. The Stinger's aiming reticle will find the helicopter anyway, and the sound of the engine will still give you an idea of where it is, if the radar isn't doing that already, so it's not like you're completely helpless. And once again, Blood Brothers provides an immediate thrill to the fight that may have otherwise been lost to the more natural control scheme and the more powerful Stinger missiles. The wind-like sounds blend well with the environment, and Liquid screaming over the song every now and again is a fantastic atmosphere builder. Also, in the more structural sense, this coming between the two moments where Assassin vs. Saladin plays works really well because of the shared emphasis on brass instrumentation. Vulcan Raven time! I'm having a lot less to say about these boss fights as I go on. It's really just coming down to mechanical additions to the game systems themselves more than the actual boss fight. That said, my favorite thing about the Twin Snakes version of this fight is that your claymores will actually fucking work now! I can't tell you how many times I've put a claymore down at the corner of a box and then it never goes off when Raven goes past it, but it's right when I'm the one cornering around that it almost always blows up. They work better here, and that's good. Other stuff like the sniper rifle and Stinger missile improvements also help, not to mention the addition of corner shooting makes it so you can take more constant pot shots at them from around the arena. Another improvement that isn't actually a part of the fight, you can keep the Soliton radar on with harder difficulties. I've gone through MGS1 on hard before, and maybe the people who have the entire game memorized have forgotten this, but this boss fight especially is a complete piece of shit with no radar. You have basically no way of knowing where he is in relation to you outside of vague cardinal directions, which does not account for whether you're entering his sight lines or not. It is not a fun fight without the radar if you haven't spent the past 30 years playing the game over and over again. It's the exact same problem I have with the cameras and other player hostile design choices in this game. The game isn't better for making a challenge that's harder to overcome if that challenge is dumb. All of that said, let's calm down a bit. This is a lot of stuff to stack in the player's favor for what's basically the penultimate boss of the game. Between all of this new shit and the fact that he has no defense to you unloading your weapon in his face, I will fully admit that this boss is inarguably worse than the original game. Between a bullshit challenge and a complete pushover, I would rather not play either of them, but it absolutely makes sense that people would be pissed off about the pushover thing because, again, penultimate boss fight. I expect something here, especially from the boss, which has actually gotten propped up over most of the game as a really imposing presence. He's just a disappointment more than anything. Poor guy. If there's any upside here, it's that his new theme, Snake vs. Shaman, is the final piece of the top 3 boss themes in this game. got the badass vocal samples, we got the wood flute, we got the actual physical percussion, we got the synth melody sounding like Spider-Man for the PS2. You add all of that into the constant sound of Raven stomping around his arena, the chain gun going off whenever he spots you, his occasional maniacal laughter. The atmosphere here is so tense. I love it. This feels like a hunt. I just wish sometimes that Raven would feel like the hunter. Metal Gear Rex. That's the sound he makes. He's so easy here, dude, and it's not even for any improvements on your part. He's just weaker. The knee missiles track way worse than they did before. He takes longer to do stuff with his crotch laser. Really, he moves through all of his phases slower. And for as needlessly complicated as it can be to properly lock onto the radome and liquid as the boss goes on, thanks to all those extra new spots you can shoot, that doesn't suddenly make this fight feel like a tense struggle for survival like the original one did. Again, kind of a bullshit challenge, but not even really. It's possible to learn it, and it feels really good to learn and beat Metal Gear Rex in the original game. Not to mention, in the original, this is where we finally get a different boss theme. Not a completely different composition, but a more threatening remix of the usual boss theme, and it works great. It makes the moment stand out even more than it already does. Metal Gear, on the other hand, that's the title, we already used Man vs. Machine for the stupid fucking tank, is a remix of Blood Brothers, which does break the mold on nearly every boss theme being completely different. This is a cool idea, but in trying to be the more dark and dramatic version of Blood Brothers, it saps a lot of the energy that song had away from it. Rex itself does take up most of the room in the sonic department, but if ever there was a song to directly compete with the boss for dominance over the soundscape, this should have been it. What's up, squad? Editing Maxwell Painwell here. So I was wrong on like 15 different fronts when I was talking about this. I was mixing up the rope descent theme with the helicopter boss theme, for Twin Snakes at least. The Twin Snakes helicopter boss theme and the Metal Gear boss theme are the same. They're both Blood Brothers, or they're both Man vs. Machine 2. I'm going off of like 2 unofficial uploads of the soundtrack here. One of them is mixed with the original soundtrack. I've got no idea what song is what. I am completely depending on the scraps of strangers here. But that's not really a negative, because in the original game, the Hind D and the Metal Gear boss theme are also the same. So, I don't know. We can pretend one of two things. Either one, I was making them up because I was expecting it to be a different and more dramatic theme, or we could pretend that I don't like this or the helicopter's boss theme because I wish that the rope descent theme was the helicopter boss theme, and it's probably that one. Don't eat my food. So yeah, sorry about the confusion there. Bye-bye. And it's about to get worse from here, because Liquid Snake is pretty much the same as Gray Fox. The melee upgrades make the fight more flexible, and the ability to dodge helps with avoiding his stupid bull charge, but the man himself is still only as capable as he was before. Only now you can't duck under some of his strikes, which I'm pretty sure you could do in the original, or maybe that was just in 4. Either way, the fight plays out basically the same, except for one crucial difference: light versus darkness. If it weren't for Man vs. Machine being the worst thing ever, this would be the worst boss theme in the game. And I actually have a really good point of comparison to... Wait, what was that? Oh my god, is that it? Is that the return of Name That Other Song? The thing that I started because I like having fun comparing music and people thought that I was trying to be more serious with it than I was? Sorry about that. Consider the circumstances here. The embodiment of light fighting the embodiment of dark in a high place via melee, with a techno beat playing in the background underscoring the moment. A song that, in my opinion, outlives the fight itself and stands out as one of the best tracks in the OST. Of course, I wouldn't be talking about Twin Snakes if I said that. I would be talking about For True Story from Sonic Adventure 2. And believe it or not, there's only one real difference between these two tracks: melody. That's the make or break for Twin Snakes' OST. Most of the time, if there is a melody to a song, it's in the percussion. If it's not, then it's in a really quiet and isolated synth line, and there isn't much going on anywhere else to supplement it. Thus, you get these really empty sounding tracks that, yes, technically do go somewhere with their melodies. It's not like the whole OST is house music that occasionally swaps between a few repeated measures of music in different ways. But like house music, there's an inherent barrier to entry if you're used to music that more actively goes somewhere with its little story. Mind, I'm not very musically educated, especially in the electronic field, and I'm sorry if none of this is correct at all, but for me, it's similar to my experience between Daft Punk's Defunk and Get Lucky. The former is more about establishing a few distinct pieces of music and then combining them in different ways to create different moods, whereas the latter features a more progressing vocal melody, a chorus, a solo. It's a more traditional piece of pop music. One requires more active engagement from the listener, while the other provides a more passively enjoyable experience. This difference is even visible, or audible, when directly comparing the Twin Snakes OST to the Sons of Liberty OST, which, by and large, are two very similar soundtracks. They both lean heavily into that trip-hop sound that I mentioned however long ago. In fact, MGS2 makes up that early 2000s trinity of trip-hop and video games with Silent Hill 2 and Chaos Theory. The key difference between the two, naturally, is melody. Sons of Liberty is never afraid to lean into a very overpowering melody for its tracks. The music dominates and shapes the atmosphere in this game. There's two tracks I think make this difference in approach abundantly clear, mostly because they sound pretty similar: Starboard from the Tanker chapter and the Armory theme in Twin Snakes. The former has a wonderful diversity of sounds used in its construction: strings, synths, industrial percussion, and a hint of woodwinds that'll become more prominent once Raiden's portion of the game begins. It uses all of these things to construct a tangible melody. As Some Call Me Johnny would say, it's very hummable. It gets in your head easy. Armory, on the other hand, is a much more subtle track. Despite following a very similar method with a mix of instruments used in the song all trading places for different passages, the melody is comparatively weak here. That's because it's almost entirely constrained to the percussion, at least for the first minute or so. It's really just a rhythm, if I'm being honest. The backing instruments do follow simple note patterns, but it's not until we get a synth lead over a minute into the track that I'd say a more tangible melody rises to the forefront. If you're not actively sneaking through the armory trying to grab supplies out from under the enemy's nose, this track doesn't really do anything. It supports the atmosphere, but it cannot provide one on its own. Mind, again, none of this is to say that the Twin Snakes OST is house music. I know it's not. It's probably not even trip-hop, I'm probably wrong about that too. But it's safe to say that if you're not actively engaging with these tracks, especially if you're not predisposed to liking this kind of music, there isn't a lot here that would get you engaged. And even if you are predisposed to liking music that requires an active listen to get the most out of it, the melodies often being confined to the percussion means that each song has less of an individual presence. I think that's the real reason why people don't give this OST a fair shake, and the trouble is that I can absolutely understand why. Like, again, I don't think the whole OST is just one copy-pasted track after another, but if you're not actively listening for the differences between them, I think I can understand getting that impression. 5 years ago, I would have completely written this OST off, but now I like it a lot. I can only hope that more people become willing to expand their palette a little bit, or if nothing else, be willing to play the game for yourself and let the music work in the environment it was made to work for. But yeah, that's the major gameplay and audio changes covered. Now we get to the part where I probably lose anyone else who still thinks I have a point to make. There have been some who have complaints with the stylistic directions this game takes. Again, let's work our way to the controversial stuff. In terms of the visual presentation, I believe I mentioned this in the other part, I really like how Twin Snakes depicts Shadow Moses. The pristine metal look from MGS2 was toned down a bit for the metal surfaces in this game, so while the place does look a little cleaner than the original, it's not to such an extent that the isolating, choking atmosphere is just gone. Especially once you get to the stone surfaces underground in the armory and in the caves and the canyon too, I think that the vibe is mostly intact. The dominant color of the game being swapped from blue to green is a little, how shall I say, reminiscent of some other remakes that I'm not a big fan of, but I don't hate it here. And if you should want it gone, there are methods. I'll get to that eventually. Moving up a notch on the pole, the character designs have changed drastically. This is because they now look like people, and not like what you see when you forget to put on your glasses before going to work. Not just people though, stylized characters. Before photorealism came for the Metal Gear series' throat, we used to get some of the most creative character designs in gaming ever, honestly. And I genuinely think Twin Snakes does some work to contribute to that. Naturally, it looks the most like MGS2, but it goes for a more anime-type aesthetic, pairs well with the vastly different shading used here compared to 2. Faces that used to be marked with slight discoloration and extra lines are now scarred and malformed. Gray Fox especially now has more explicit bags under his eyes, and between that and the paler skin and raspier voice, he comes off much more like a reanimated corpse. Most of the characters in this game never even show up in sequels or prequels, so by default, they get a relative glow up here. Even for the regular characters, I think that many of them look great, or at least on par with how they'd look in MGS2. Meryl has a youthfulness to her expressions that complements her character, and her hair having a separate look for when it's all messed up is a wonderful little detail. Otacon looks like a little rat dude, but it suits his cowardly nature in this game, and the exaggerated appearance helps him sell emotive moments better, in my opinion. And that's compared to MGS2, not 1. Like, obviously he sells emotion better with his face in this compared to 1. But in 2, he just kinda looks like a dude. A lot of the heavy lifting for his scenes in that game comes from the voice acting, so it's nice to see that his face is being used to contribute here. Ocelot follows suit, and in his case especially, the fact that this look was taken into consideration with the transition into MGS4, it's clear that the minds at Koji Pro felt the same way. Funny enough, Snake doesn't actually change that much from 2 to this, but it is nice to get an update of his original model with a face that looks like a face, without straight up reusing the Sons of Liberty design. This might actually be my favorite look for him in the series, a little slimmer in the face, but still recognizable as Solid Snake, not easily confused with Naked or Venom, and realistically could age into the look from Guns of the Patriots. I don't think we're quite ready for the coup de grace yet, so let's make one more final detour. The voice acting. People really hate the voice acting, and I get it. Some decisions made here do feel a bit misguided, but one thing first, let's all remember to blame the directors, not the actors. They're working with what they're given, and if they're not given anything, that's not their fault. That was Silicon Knights' fault. Cutting the accents was a strange choice, and it does take away from the instant recognizability of these characters. Nastasha Romanenko especially loses a lot of her charm, but at least she was able to keep some of her voice. Assuming everyone loses an equal amount of accent, she definitely had enough left over to sound like she does in Twin Snakes.
Those terrorists are serious about launching a nuclear weapon? The world cannot stand by idly and allow that to happen, and neither can I. Those terrorists are serious about launching a nuclear weapon. The world cannot stand by idly and allow that to happen, and neither can I.
Did I just, stop talking about voice acting for a bit? Oh dear, I do. Tangent incoming. Likewise, the script changes where they do appear can be a little jarring. They neither add nor remove from the moment at hand, for the most part, though there are some exceptions. One positive change I like is Snake and Meryl's exchange before the Psycho Mantis fight. The slower pace of conversation here makes the moment feel much less stilted. Not to mention the line change of "if you lose your worm food" to "you'll die a dog's death" does line up better with the general imagery of the game. Not to mention it gets paid off later with Snake's distinction between dogs and wolves.
This isn't a training exercise. Our lives are riding on this. There are no heroes or heroines. If you lose, you're worm food.
Yeah.
This isn't a training exercise. Our lives are riding on this. There are no heroes or heroines. You lose, you die a dog's death.
Yeah.
There's another pretty blatant change made to the translation here that's always stuck out to me, but for the life of me, I cannot remember it. This one alone, though, does show that most of the changes here are consequences of a more literal translation. But don't just take my word for it. The original English translation of Metal Gear Solid was credited solely to Jeremy Blaustein of Aoishi Translations. He's actually penned a full article on Polygon's website about the process he took to create this translation, full of exciting details like Kojima nabbing Blaustein's daughter's name, Zoe, for a later project he would create, as well as the bulk of his research coming from a deep dive into the literary works of Richard Demodick Marchenko, the creative mind behind Rogue Warrior. Or as you may know him, the creative mind behind Suck My Balls, my hairy fucking big balls, wrap them around your fucking mouth. Anyway, Blaustein goes into extreme detail in that article about how the translation job impacted his life, and the art of the translation in a more general sense. One point he makes abundantly clear is that you cannot just bring over the exact intention of the text. You have to make adjustments for a foreign culture's norms, expectations, and preconceptions about certain things. You have to justify certain concepts, or in some cases, add context wherever it'll fit in the length of already recorded Japanese voice lines to make those lines work for Americans. And that he did. I'm of the firm opinion that this localization, for as bizarre as it is compared to the later games, and I'm talking about MGS1 here, is a net benefit for the original game. Even with the small moments like the worm food line blurring the running imagery of dogs and wolves, and others coming off especially cheesy in the modern day, it bravely combats and defeats that classic long-windedness and loftiness that MGS dialogue so often embraces to its detriment. It feels like actual humans talking to each other. For the most part, at least. Even where it doesn't, it's rarely on the level of lines and speeches we would get in later games. Blaustein himself puts it best. Translation is not a science, it is an art. One must take liberties with the text to capture the essence of words in an attempt to recreate the meaning of the original for a very different audience with a very different cultural background. That essence is found less in the words themselves than in the spaces between the words. It is a tone, an ever-present unspoken attitude, and in this case, it was a very confident tone. It is the mark of a single hand that often gives a work integrity and power, and I didn't want to put my fingerprint on Metal Gear Solid. I wanted to imitate what I thought Kojima desired from the text. Naturally, Kojima didn't desire someone else's work. That wouldn't be genius, since he's the ultimate video game director, man, and anyone compromising his work in any way is an obstacle to the inevitable renaissance of gaming. That line in MGS2 about creating context now reads a little bit different to me than it did before reading this article. To all the people commenting under the first video who had it in their head that I'm some kind of Kojima fanboy who doesn't like Delta because it didn't have him but makes exceptions for Twin Snakes for some reason, don't get it twisted. I think the man is so far up his own ass that he can't even smell it anymore. And it's decisions like this, having the entire game retranslated by Intact just so it's closer to his vision, that make me feel that way. Regardless of how I feel about the new script itself, this decision was a selfish and egotistical one, and I wish it had been made from a more pure want to distinguish Twin Snakes from the original. In any case, though, we have a new script, and it gets the job done. Some changes are good, some are bad. Fuck Kojima. Talking of good and bad changes, back to the subject of voice acting. Other changes made to these performances feel like they were made to provide a different view of these characters. Naomi sounding absolutely dead inside the entire game helps to sell her bitter resentment for Snake and the hatred that allowed her to do the things that she did to him.
How does that feel, Snake? A little better?
How did you do that?
I stimulated your muscle fibers with the nanomachine cilia. That's about all I can do for you.
Naomi, please talk to me. Say something to take my mind off the pain.
What can I say?
Anything.
I'm not a very good talker.
Please. Tell me about yourself.
Myself? That's a tough one.
Any family?
That's not a happy topic for me. How does that feel, Snake? A little better?
A shiatsu massage. How did you do that?
I stimulated your muscle fibers with the nanomachine cilia. That's about all I can do for you.
Naomi, please talk to me. Say something to take my mind off the pain.
What can I say?
Anything.
I'm not a very good talker.
Please. Tell me about yourself.
Myself? That's a tough one.
Any family?
That's not a happy topic for me.
Likewise, Campbell sounding the way he does could easily be a consequence of his changed delivery from MGS2 bleeding over into this game, but it could just as easily reflect the weight of having to manipulate and betray someone he truly sees as an old friend.
There's enough dirt in your file from your days as an agent to keep you in the stockade until you're a very old man.
Oh, I see. Blackmail.
No, Snake. I prefer to look at it as helping you come to a decision more easily. But anyway, I know you better than that. You'd take this assignment even without the threat.
Why do you say that?
You're a natural-born soldier. You're not the grow old gracefully type. It's the same for all of us who've seen real action. The only place we can feel truly alive is on the battlefield. I'm a soldier too. I know those feelings of powerlessness, frustration that you feel every day. You've tried to play the Boy Scout out there in Alaska, but you can't race dogs in the snow forever. Why don't you come back to us and be a soldier again?
You think my life is some kind of a joke?
Snake, I just want to give you back your purpose in life.
When Campbell berates Snake in the original briefing, I get the sense that he's talking down at him in his life. But in Twin Snakes, I hear a little more genuine emotion in his voice. Like maybe on some level he really does want to believe that Snake would accept this assignment willingly, just to take some of the blame off of his own shoulders.
You're being indicted by the military. You committed a whole lot of crimes of treachery during your days as an agent.
Oh, I see. Blackmail.
No, Snake. It's just a little scheme the brass thought up. But anyway, I know you. You'd take this assignment even without any threat.
What's that supposed to mean?
You are a natural-born soldier. You can't live a normal life in peace. It's the same for all of us who've seen real action. The only place we can feel truly alive is on the battlefield. I'm a soldier too. I know those feelings of powerlessness, frustration that you feel every day. You've tried to play the Boy Scout out there in Alaska, but you can't race dogs in the snow forever. Why don't you come back to us and be a soldier again?
You think my life is some kind of a joke?
Snake, I just want to give you back your purpose in life.
It doesn't fix the fact that they forgot to make Snake's hair blonde here so that he could snip and dye it to look less like Liquid, but, oh well, hardly the biggest blunder this game makes regarding genetic identity, so, oops. When it comes to characters you'll actually see in the game, Snake sounding more like his MGS2 version is honestly just better in the grand scheme of things. I know there's a lot of charm to Hader's original performance, but there are enough moments where the voice sounds like a complete put-on, not to mention bits where he just makes no attempt to do the voice, and others where his delivery is just awful regardless. The Twin Snakes performance is my preferred of the two.
So, the snakes finally come out of this hole. Are you ready now, my brother?
Why are you calling me brother? Who the hell are you?
I'm you. I'm your shadow.
What?
So, the snakes finally come out of his hole. Are you ready now, my brother?
Why are you calling me brother? Who the hell are you?
I'm you. I'm your shadow.
What?
As for Otacon and Meryl, it's here or there. Here being Meryl and there being Otacon. As in, here she is, sounding way better, way less exaggerated, and more capable of actually landing emotional moments.
There are no heroes in war. All the heroes I know are either dead or in prison, one or the other.
But Snake, you're a hero, aren't you?
I'm just a man who's good at what he does, killing. There's no winning or losing for a mercenary. The only winners in war are the people.
That's right, and you fight for the people.
I've never fought for anyone but myself. I've got no purpose in life, no ultimate goal.
Come on.
It's only when I'm cheating death on the battlefield, the only time I feel truly alive.
Seeing other people die makes you feel alive, huh? You love war and don't want it to stop? Is it the same with all great soldiers throughout history?
There are no heroes in war. All the heroes I know are either dead or in prison, one or the other.
But Snake, you're a hero, aren't you?
I'm just a guy who can only find meaning on the battlefield. There's no winning or losing for a mercenary. The only winners in war are the people.
That's right. And you fight for the people.
I've never fought for anyone but myself. I've got no purpose in life, no ultimate goal.
Come on.
It's only when I'm cheating death on the battlefield, the only time I feel truly alive.
Seeing other people die makes you feel alive, huh? You can't stop loving war. Is it the same for all soldiers throughout history?
And Otacon is over there in the original where I like him, and I wish that in Twin Snakes he would not have only one inflection for the entirety of his lines. He still manages some scenes, Sniper Wolf's death and the beginning of his ending come to mind, but nearly every other scene sees him using that same nerd voice. It just gets on my nerves is all.
It's me, Otacon. Wow, they even captured you.
Hurry, get me out of here.
Let me go, that hurts.
Hurry up!
Is that how you ask a guy a favor? Let me go. Jeez, it's like an animal's cage. Oh, what a smell.
It's me, Otacon.
Wow, they even captured you.
Hurry, get me out of here.
Let me go, that hurts.
Hurry up.
Snake, is that how you ask a guy a favor? Let me go. Jeez. It's like an animal's cage. What a smell.
I'll admit, I'm rushing a bit through these performances. Haven't even mentioned Ocelot, even though he also benefits a lot from the chance to redo his most iconic moments from MGS1.
I'm going to run a high-voltage electric current through your body. If it's just for a short time, it won't kill you.
But I never heard that before.
You're a tough guy, Snake. But I've got some bad news for you. You're no POW. You're a hostage. There's no Geneva Convention. No one is coming to save you. Starting to feel a little scared. Good. You should be. I'm going to run a high-voltage electric current through your body. If it's just for a short time, it won't kill you. Did you know that it was the French who first thought of using electrical shocks as a means of torture?
Hey, French films are all right, but I don't care about that crap.
You're a tough guy, Snake. But I've got some bad news for you. You're no POW. You're a hostage. There's no Geneva Convention. No one is coming to save you. Starting to feel a little scared? Good. You should be.
That's because there's one performance in particular that I want to praise, and that is Cam Clark's moment of redemption as Liquid Snake. I am hard-pressed to name a consistently worse performance in the original game. Nearly every character does well, especially given the time and the circumstances, but Liquid Snake is such an extreme outlier that it straight up ruins any chance he has to be a threatening villain. Pick any line out of a hat, and it sounds like Clark's either plugging his nose, rushing way too hard, or is just completely checked out of the performance.
Stay alert. He'll be through here. I know it. I'm going to swat down a couple of bothersome flies. There definitely is a resemblance, don't you think, little brother? Or should I say, big brother? Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You and I are both the last surviving sons of Big Boss. Come on, fly! Snake! That's right. I'm just the leftovers of what they used to make you. Can you understand what it's like to know that you're garbage since the day you were born? You stole my chance for revenge. Now I'll finish the work that Father began. I will surpass him. I will destroy him.
You're just like Naomi.
Well, I'm not like you. In the Middle East, we don't hunt foxes. We hunt jackals. Instead of foxhounds, we use royal harriers. Not yet, Snake. It's not over yet.
Liquid!
He sounds like a particularly dispassionate Sunday morning cartoon villain, if I'm being blatantly honest. And while that may be what Liquid is for some people, I like him being a little more than that. Compare that to Twin Snakes, and I wouldn't have even guessed it was the same character. He's perfect here. This is the Liquid Snake that everyone in-universe cares about way too much. Every word he speaks is dripping with snark, not to mention hatred for Solid Snake. He sounds like he lives and breathes solely for the chance to kill his brother and inherit and destroy his father's legacy.
Stay alert. He'll be through here. I know it. I'm going to swat down a couple of bothersome flies. There definitely is a resemblance, don't you think, little brother? Or should I say, big brother? I'm not sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You and I are both the last surviving sons of Big Boss. Come on, fly! That's right. I'm just the leftovers of what they used to make you. Can you understand what it's like to know that you're garbage since the day you were born? You stole my chance for revenge. Now I'll finish the work that Father began. I will surpass him. I will destroy him!
You're just like Naomi.
Well, I'm not like you.
In the Middle East, we don't hunt foxes, we hunt jackals. Instead of foxhounds,
We use royal harriers!
Not yet, Snake!
It's not over yet!
Liquid!
It honestly helps sell the sort of confusing motivations he has. I've never really understood whether he actually cares about Outer Heaven and the Rebellion, but in Twin Snakes, I get the feeling that literally everything he does is done in service of securing his spot as the one and only Snake left in the world he wants to create. His boss fights are all greatly improved with this voice acting. I could literally pull any line out of a hat and it's inarguably better in Twin Snakes. Again, this video isn't about saying Twin Snakes is better, it just happens that in this specific area, it is. And I love this performance, and I want everyone to freaking appreciate it.
Is she alive?
I'm not sure. She was alive a few hours ago. poor girl kept calling your name.
Meryl,
Stupid woman. Falling in love with a man who doesn't even have a name?
I have a name.
No. We have no past, no future. If we did, our fate is nothing but what is determined in the genes we inherited from our father.
Let Meryl go.
As soon as we finished our business, we're almost out of time.
You're talking about Fox Die.
No. It seems now that the Pentagon knows that Metal Gear is destroyed. They've arrived at a decision. They won't even need a BDA. If you want the details, why don't you ask your precious Colonel Campbell?
I'm showing cutscenes now. Can't put it off anymore. It's time. When people talk about how the Twin Snakes is a bad remake, the conversation always comes to the new cutscenes directed by Ryuhei Kitamura. They're just rip-off Matrix action scenes, way too much slow-mo, tonally inconsistent with the original game. Don't understand what made the original game good. Aside from it being well understood at this point that Kojima or someone at Konami who had the authority to make the choice wanted Kitamura to go ham with the cutscenes or at least to make something that wasn't just the same as the original, I think it's about time someone rips that bandage off and just comes right out with it. These aren't Matrix ripoffs, they're Kitamura ripoffs. Oh wait, he's the guy that directed the cutscenes! Seriously, this is something that I'm just about sick of hearing repeated constantly from people cashing in their make fun of Twin Snakes on the internet coupons for a free 100,000 views from butthurt Kojima fanboys who can't stand the idea of a Metal Gear thing that he didn't drag his nuts all over before shipping it out into the world. This isn't just a tired and obnoxious comparison, it's factually incorrect. Kitamura was well acquainted with this style of filmmaking by 2003. He'd been doing it since 2 years before The Matrix came out. Not to mention The Matrix was a send-up to Hong Kong action, just with a bunch of visual effects thrown onto it. Hell, Max Payne came out 2 years after The Matrix, right between it and Twin Snakes, and it, too, was far more of an homage to Woo compared to the Wachowskis. Not to make it sound like The Matrix didn't shape a lot of major films in the years following its release, but can we please stop acting like slow-mo gun fu didn't exist until Americans did it? There's a lot more I could say about this, but I don't want to sidetrack the entire video again, so I'll get to the other main criticism people have of these cutscenes. The idea that they're not faithful to the Metal Gear identity. I wouldn't call this completely unfounded, but here's the thing. A lot of the cutscenes do feel like Metal Gear. We cannot sit here and pretend like this action-heavy slow-mo having stuff is something exclusive to Twin Snakes, especially when MGS2 did all of it 2 years prior. By the way, sorry I used HD footage from 2 last time. I know everyone was really upset about it, throwing off the visual cohesion of the whole thing. There were definitely so many comments about that. So here's the original. It wouldn't be Maxwell Painwell without PS2 footage. Anyway, yeah, MGS2 did this stuff, and it wasn't just Vamp either. MGS3 used plenty of slow-mo in obnoxious places. MGS5 was so obnoxious about it to the point that it implemented slow-mo into your melee takedowns and reflex mode. Pound for pound, I'd say you'll see more heavy vignettes and blurred action in that game compared to every Twin Snakes cutscene, just from how often the effect is used for such mundane animations and actions. So why is it so insufferable in Twin Snakes? Because MGS1 didn't have it? You're free to just go back and play it if you want the same experience. I assume you're playing a remake for the differences in the remake. Because it's stupid? Metal Gear and stupid are listed right next to each other in every thesaurus on Earth. Because it's overused? This much I would understand, but considering this is the series where we get fan service for Metal Gear Rex in every single mainline entry, not to mention the other types of fan service we're way too used to, I think it's a bit hypocritical to say that when Twin Snakes overuses a gimmick, it's uniquely in the wrong. Even with that angle, I would argue that Twin Snakes is so consistently good at portraying and executing its action that it makes up for the same techniques being used in most of its cutscenes. Not to mention, this game being animated gave Kitamura the chance to flex and improve his cinematic style of over-the-top action. Key thing to note in every Twin Snakes cutscene, the continuity of motion is handled supremely well. I've checked out some scenes from Versus, don't want to spoil myself on the whole thing because I'd like to watch it at some point. His most recent film at the time was that. He did a lot of manga adaptations too, but in terms of original work, that's what there was. One thing I'd actually criticize there is that the camera is often pulled way too close to keep track of the action across shots. Granted, in some moments it seems intentional and it works, but in others it's unnecessarily confusing. Compare that to Twin Snakes, where I'm never confused about who's doing what. Whenever limbs are flying across the screen, not only can I tell who is where, but I can easily keep track of the action even when the camera cuts to a completely different position. Another very cool detail, these cutscenes have mastered the art of the sudden stop. When the action and tension have reached their peak, the game is never afraid to halt, to pause, and hang on a moment of uncertainty. Yes, there is humor in the juxtaposition, but it never feels like a moment fails for the tonal whiplash. It just underscores Snake's confusion or the gravity of the moments. Even then, there are some very purposeful moments of humor in these cutscenes, and they're up there with the funniest moments of the Kojima-directed MGS games. And once again, I rarely hear complaints about Kojima's tendency to drop all tension in a moment for the sake of a laugh. Even with stuff like Otacon falling down all the time, for me, it's just a reminder that the man is barely able to walk for the entirety of the game. He just sort of stops having a limp halfway through the original, so I like the consistency, even if it comes with making some emotional moments, fall a little flat. Even with that considered, his whole thing with Sniper Wolf is not compelling at all. Like, it's literally just not a good romance. They're not good for each other. She's just mean to him and he likes her because, I don't know, dude. Otacon making these moments not work as well as they could is not really my main concern when I'm considering why these moments don't work. The only real problem's in the ending, and even then, that's funny enough that I can laugh it off.
And then, laugh. Don't you think, Snake? Don't worry. I'm gonna choose life too.
And I could keep going, too. Every MGS game has its moments where the hero is completely pathetic. This trend started in MGS 2, mostly to underscore Raiden's inferiority compared to Snake, but it's something that kept up through most of the series. Naked Snake needing every spy in Russia to help him complete his mission. Old Snake being a disheveled mess trying and failing to stop Liquid Ocelot at every turn. Hell, Big Boss gets kidnapped and stripped in both of the Portable games, leaving his team in Portable Ops to get him out themselves, and MSF soldiers to pick up his belongings so he could be equipped to fight Peace Walker in the Peace Walker. The only real exception is Venom Snake, but even then, his inherent trusting nature and refusal to stoop to the immorality of Big Boss is kind of the point of the game, and it causes Diamond Dogs a lot of trouble in the short and long run. MGS1 is basically the only game where Snake never has a moment of looking like a dumbass. And just to clear up a potential misconception, no, the torture scenes don't count for what I'm talking about here. Those are basically a series staple at this point, and every character having to go through that, except for Venom technically, doesn't count as that character looking like a dumbass. Even with MGS1, you might say that Snake technically getting duped and starting Metal Gear even though he was trying to stop it might count for that, and I maybe would consider it if it weren't literally every single character in the game duping him. It's different from Eva duping the entire United States government. That was one person tricking a whole entity. And it's not like Raiden getting duped by the AI or the collective consciousness or whatever the hell those things are. It's him and the player getting duped by Kojima, basically. In MGS1, Snake getting duped by every other character in the game doesn't really feel like something he could have prevented or predicted. It's sort of the fiction making an excuse for his looking like a dumbass, and that, especially, does not count for what I'm trying to say here. Think about it like this. How many quantifiable individual moments of failure does Snake experience in MGS1? For my money, that number is next to or equal to 0, and especially when you compare that to Raiden, Naked Snake, and Old Snake, those are rookie numbers. So it's not necessarily a matter of Snake being hyper-capable or anything like that in the original game. It's just that in introducing these individual moments of failure, Twin Snakes makes MGS1 fit better into canon, even with all the insistence on badass backflips and things of that nature. Snake isn't an invincible action hero in this game. Many of his stunts end up with him on the ground in a jumbled mess, needing to gather himself and get back up to try again. We see this in moments where he's technically outmatched. We see this in moments where he's just showing off or angry. Hell, the one scene that everyone points at when they say this game turns Snake into the One, the ending of the Hind E fight after Snake jumps off the missile to fire at Liquid, do you know what he does? He lands on his back, takes the full brunt of that metal flooring straight into his scapula. He is punished for attempting an epic cool guy maneuver, but even so, he still manages to strike the killing blow and send Liquid into a downward spiral of hellfire. And that is what makes him Solid Snake. The ability to pull off the most insane ideas, and yeah, he'll suffer for it, but he'll make it through and keep going no matter what. That's the entire message of Metal Gear Solid 1. Metal Gear Solid as a whole, really. The understanding that while life is suffering, we can't measure it in win or lose. We can only move forward and live. Twin Snakes, for all of its faults and for all of its alterations to the source material, still manages to tell its story, both in the literal sense and in the thematic sense. When I finish this game and get to the credits, when I hear the beginning of The Best Is Yet to Come, I don't think it's the game ending on a tonally inconsistent note in an effort to remain true to the original. I think it's the logical endpoint. I think it's just another sign of how good of a remake this is. Because despite being the Twin Snakes, this game is still Metal Gear Solid. Thank you very much for watching this very long video, especially if you're coming here after the Delta one. Really, this is the video I wanted to make. I've wanted to experience Twin Snakes for the longest time now, and recently, I had the excuse to do so. And I'm very pleased to have come out the other end feeling like I thought I would feel, that the game is severely misunderstood and hated on for some very dumb and petty reasons. Believe me, I still understand that the game isn't exactly like MGS1, and that makes it a bad remake to some people, but for me, that's why it's a good remake. I'm not getting the same experience I would get from the original. I have tangible reasons to go back and play it over Twin Snakes, should I ever get that urge. And I hope that if you've hated on Twin Snakes from the sidelines without ever giving it a fair shake, that these videos have given you that urge too. You don't have to like it, but you should at least try it. Even if it won't be on original hardware, it's almost always worth playing games before you talk about them. As for me, this is where I fall down a hill and ride away on an epic snowmobile with my Super Spy stud. Special thanks to the insane gamers, Jestby, Hashbear, Indolent Lard, and Cohen. You guys make this possible. And if you want to join in with those epic dudes, join a lower tier, or just check it out to see the sights, feel free to head on over to the Patreon and peruse my wares. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Take care of yourself.